Have you noticed that the finale dungeon of the starter set is just the worst part of the whole adventure for some reason? And that's such a shame. This is meant to be a special moment, the finale, the dramatic climax of the whole adventure. So today, we're going to fix this dungeon. But first, let me break down all the unfun parts of the dungeon as written, so you really know what we're getting into. As written, the entrance to the dungeon is meant to be this bridge of light that only gets activated when the uber-powerful dragon NPC Runara decides to give the characters the key, just randomly. So instead, we've been saying, look, the characters have to find a crystal or a gem of some kind that allows Runara to craft that key, and that kind of involves them in that solution. As written, the kobolds that are in this dungeon are actually semi-friendly because they can be intimidated or persuaded or deceived into helping the party out a little bit. But I feel that as a finale, this is not the time for moral ambiguity. I don't want to be asking, were these really the bad guys? No. In the final episode, I want conflict and resolution. I don't want any doubt. As written, the Observatory has this awesome main chamber with these 5 Dragon Totems and this great statue in the middle, but this is not the final staging area for the conflict against Sparkrender. No, because in the other room, just in the back room, Sparkrender's meant to be asleep. If you have your dragon be asleep when the party fight him, then they will just obliterate him. They will smash your villain, and it will be unsatisfying for everybody. Do not do that. As written, Sparkrender is meant to be attempting some kind of ritual, and yet the book gives no provisions about what that ritual is or what happens if Sparkrender completes the ritual. As written, this villain cannot win. There are no stakes. It's a rigged game. So you and we're going to fix that right now and make this finale special. The very first thing you need to do is establish stakes, either at the start of this session, between sessions, or at the end of the previous sessions. You've got to establish these dramatic stakes. Your players need to come into this session feeling pumped, like they're about to walk into a boxing ring, like their life is on the line. This is the part of the story where the music swells and everybody gets goosebumps. Here's how you do it. At Dragon's Rest, Runara sets this foreboding tone by approaching the players and say, look at the sky, this weather, it's not natural. And the sky is a green coloration. It's roiling clouds of a tropical hailstorm approaching. She says, I can sense Lord Aidron in pain somewhere. I fear that Sparkrender is preparing some dark ritual. Here, take this crystal key. You can use it to cross the bridge of light. Thank you for bringing me those materials. You have a lot of player agency. If any NPCs around Dragon's Rest have a special relationship with one of the party members, then you should have that NPC approach that player in a somber, private moment to help strengthen that player's resolve. You especially want the kobold inventor Myla to approach the party with a bit of foreshadowing, saying, my brothers Mek and Min will try and hinder your progress with the device they stole from me, and it would break my heart to think of something that I made hurting one of my friends. So my advice to you is if you do go up against them in combat, try not to stand too close to each other. Because later in this video, I'm going to tell you that we've given those characters a gun. And at that moment, the sky opens up and it starts bucketing down rain. And Runara says, you have to go, there's not much time. I fear the ritual may already be underway. Then you can describe the party bolting towards this observatory through the wilderness. It's a little bit like that scene in the second Lord of the Rings movie when Aragorn, Gimli and Orlando Bloom are like running over those cliff faces. We get those wide helicopter shots of the whole thing. It's just like that, except it's bucketing down rain, and they're under the red glow of the King Killer star. When the party's traveling towards the final dungeon, there should not be any kind of random encounter unless there's some crucial bit of exposition that you've forgotten to do and you want to, quickly squeeze it in right here at the end. Mainly because we don't want to undercut the tension and the drama and the urgency we've already established. When the players arrive at the observatory, they see the chasm between the mainland and the observatory building, and they see windows in this building that pulse with blue light, and they hear the draconic chanting of Sparkrender doing his dark deed, and they hear the cries of Lord Aidron being tortured within. At the exact moment the party uses the crystal key to activate the bridge and light, the winged kobolds Mek and Min come flying out of one of the building's windows, carrying between them some kind of weapon which they've stolen from Myla. Now, I want you to treat these two characters as a single stat block, but when they reach down to half health, then one of the kobolds dies and the other one tries to flee back inside the building. And here's my custom stat block for Mek and Min. Take a screenshot of this. Now, one of these kobolds is carrying a whip because they are a sturge trainer. They crack the whip and out from the chasm below come flying up 6 sturges. The 2 kobolds say something henchman-like, and then we roll for initiative. But that's not all. Because after you roll for initiative, you're going to take a very special dice and dramatically put it in front of the table so all the players can see and say, players, this is Sparkrender's countdown dice. This represents his ritual of ancestral ascension. And after this many rounds have expired, then Sparkrender's ritual will be complete. And he will have won. Good luck. If you have 4 players at the table, I'd suggest a D10 for your countdown dice. If you have 3 players, be a bit more lenient and give them a D12. You don't roll the dice, you put it at the maximum value, so 10 or 12. And the rest of this session happens in initiative. So let's talk about the ritual real quick, because the book gives you 0 guidance about this event. Now, I said right at the start of the campaign, players, you have 48 hours before Sparkrender's evil ritual will be complete. But if the players are arriving here earlier than that, and they arrive here and see the ritual is already underway, they might feel a little bit ripped off. That might feel like I've moved the goalposts. But trust me, this is fair. Because if Sparkrender's starting the ritual early, he does so at a cost, because at the end of this ritual, when the dice counts down to nothing, he's going to have to make a roll. The ritual that Sparkrender's attempting to cast is almost impossible for me to pronounce. It's the ritual of ancestral ascension. If he's successful, then what he's going to do is immediately move from a blue dragon wormling stat block to a young green dragon stat block. And if the ritual fails, then he will immediately take 1d20 damage. To perform the ritual, he's needed to collect these 5 draconic totems made from the remains of other dead dragons on the island. He needs to have the crossing of the Kingkiller Star, and he needs to sacrifice Lord Aidron in the casting of the ritual. Right now on my Patreon, I've got this intricate system for performing draconic rituals in this PDF. You see, dragons craft these totems out of bone, blood, soul, or scale, and they channel different energies through different astrological conditions, and they've got this whole suite of rad rituals that they can attempt. But if the players manage to disrupt one of these rituals and make the magic unbalanced, then this PDF has exact instructions for how the dragon needs to rebalance that ritual and attempt to cast it anyway, like Sparkrender might have to do. This PDF was written in partnership with Ryan from the Verdigris table and is available right now on Patreon for $6. But if you're not currently a patron, or you just don't want to use my fancy and super cool system, then you could just say that Sparkrender needs to make a DC 10 Arcana check to perform the ritual. Now, that might not seem like much. That might seem easy, but we're going to give him disadvantage for every element of disruption. So if the players destroy a totem, or they free Lord Aidron, or they manage to make him do it early or late in relation to the Kingkiller Star, each of those elements will give disadvantage that stacks. After beating Mek and Min and the players cross the Bridge of Light and burst through these double doors, they'll encounter the final boss battle against Sparkrender mid-ritual. They see Lord Aidron pinned to the ground by heavy chains ready to be sacrificed. They see 5 draconic totems around an astrological altar in the center. Now, the combatants in this room are going to be Sparkrender, then the escaped kobold, either Mek or Min, whichever one got away, and then enough kobold minions to even out the numbers. So if you have 5 players, you want to have 5 total combatants for them. Now, these extra kobolds that we're adding in, they're not full statted kobolds. They're minions. So that means they do regular damage, they have regular stats, except they only have 1 hit point, and they get a rogue's evasion ability, which is here. When you're running Sparkrender in this fight, let's say that even though he's casting this ritual, he can still fly around and he can fight and he can speak. And on that note, this is your villain, right? This is your big bad. He shouldn't be silent. He's more than just a stat block with numbers on it. But the problem is, I'm quite bad at dialogue, so I want you to leave a comment downstairs with your best evil dragon ritual casting dialogue, and then other people can kind of pick through it and build their own vocabulary for this boy. Strategy-wise, I want you to be brutal with Sparkrender. They need to fear your villain. So, give him a single point of legendary resistance. Have him use his breath weapon first round of combat and immediately after it recharges every round if possible. And, this is the real kicker, have Sparkrender command his kobold minions to attack unconscious players. It would be appropriate to kill a player in this combat. In this particular chamber, at the start of every round, you're rolling on the Dragon Spirit table. I love this idea from the book. Some good things, some bad things on this table. Let's roll and find out. Now, all this energy is actually being channeled through the totems. The totems are crucial for the ritual. If the players manage to destroy all the totems, then the ritual, I would say, just ends immediately. But if they destroy just a few, the ritual can still continue. When the players are attacking the totems, if they choose to, I'm going to give each totem an armor class of 17 and 10 hit points. And when a totem's destroyed, it erupts with draconic energy, affecting the nearest creature, friend or foe. So you can use this table here to determine what the damage type is, how much damage it does, and what the saving throw is to resist that damage. The players might also try to disrupt the ritual by freeing Lord Aidron. He is the bronze dragon pinned to the ground by heavy chains. A player can walk up to any of the chains and use their action to remove the spike from the ground. If the players remove 2 spikes, then Lord Aidron has enough wiggle room to be able to defend himself and is no longer at risk of being sacrificed. And the player that freed him gets a benefit. You see, we don't want to roll initiative for Lord Aidron and have him, bog down the pace of this combat. Instead, we're going to say, hey, thank you for saving this dragon. He can help you by using his breath weapon once in combat. And player who freed him, you get to decide when that is. Just let me know on your turn as a bonus action. If the players manage to kill Sparkrender or drive him off, then of course the kobolds flee, but the drama is not over, because this ritual is still underway. The room is pulsing with draconic energy. Wild magic. What are the players going to do with the energy in this room? The players might decide to ignore the ritual and just let it fizzle out. Or they might send one of their party members up to the altar to channel the energy into themselves. Or they might ask Lord Aidron to take over the ritual and claim the power for himself. If someone does choose to attempt to finish the ritual, they would need to roll to channel these wild magics into themselves the same way that Sparkrender would have to. But if they fail, they will take 1d20 damage. If they succeed though, if it's Lord Aidron, then he will level up from a bronze dragon wormling to a young bronze dragon. And if a player attempts to channel this energy into themselves, then they will transform into a dragonborn and they will level up one level higher than the rest of the party. And after everything resolves, the players get loot, they all level up, and they head back to Dragon's Rest to all be heroes. If you loved this guide, then you would really appreciate my Compass Rose guide. Help your players get to the bottom of this harpy situation in the starter set. Check it out.